What is up, guys? Teddy Cornwell here. Welcome to the Underdog Talk, the world's most underrated podcast. And there's just something about the underdog. But, ladies and gentlemen, you see him two-time Pro Bowl, one of the best tight ends of all time. I'm just going to say it. A man who teaches the importance of mental performance in sports, a Denver Bronco, a Jacksonville Jaguar. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, Julius Thomas, what is up, man? How you doing today?
Oh man, I appreciate that introduction. Very humbling. And been an underdog my whole life, and that's just been a part of my story. It's made me who I've become, and now I love talking to other people and helping other people get that encouragement, knowing that hey, it doesn't matter where you start from in life, you can get to wherever you want to go if you learn the right process. And that's really what I've been doing on the second half, or now my third career, is really teaching people what that process is, talking to people about mind and brain. And today I'm doing great because I get a chance to talk about some of my favorite things: mental performance, motivation, sports, and hopefully it can be something that adds value to others, because that's one of the things that I'm searching for most is how do I add value to the lives of others? And, when I'm 80, I want to sleep good. And only way I'm going to do that is if I know that I lived a life of service. So I'm after it.
You are after it today, and giving back is, I always say if this podcast can affect one person, then that one person, I've accomplished my goal. And obviously, you're a big believer in mental performance. And I said off air, I think it's second to none. How crucial is mental performance in the world of sports, Julius? And then what distinguishes a mentally resilient athlete from others?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And how important is mental performance? It's everything that we're not doing in the body, right? So, yes, the body is important, right? We got to run, we got to jump, we have to be able to catch the ball, throw the ball, hit the ball, you name it, whatever we're doing in sport. But there's so much that's happening in the mind and brain that's allowing us to do that, right? Like, most people are not as familiar with neuroscience as I've become over the last 6 years, but every little brain region has a specific task or role that it plays in the orchestra of mental function. And we have to have coordination within that orchestra, or we get a clunky sounding music. It's the same way when we go to perform. So not only does our brain have to be organized, and we have to have an integrated connection that's strong enough to help us move brilliantly. I was talking about a triple axel in class the other day, and I was like, imagine the coordination between brain regions to pull that one off, right? Anybody in class want to jump up right now and try that? But then there's also the mind, right? You talked about what does it mean to be resilient? Well, for me, my definition of resilient is not your capacity to never get knocked down. I think that in the past, I thought, a resilient person is one that never has to drop to a knee, one that never hits the ground. No, that's not true. Resilience is your capacity to pop back up. Resilience is your capacity to accept really tough circumstances and courageously keep stepping into them, one after the next after the next. Resilience is a cognitive interest in tough times, right? Like, resilient people the times are tough. That's fine with me. You have to love tough circumstances if you're a resilient person. Some people say, the circumstances are tough. I need to find another place to go. I need to find another place to be. And I wouldn't define that as resilience.
I totally agree on that. And I think the tough times are what makes us in a sense. And, we often become stronger and better from these tough times and being resilient. And I love everything that you said in that. Now, are there differences in mental performances requirements between team sports and individual sports? I've always wondered that, as obviously you were a team sport player.
Yep.
And how can athletes adapt their, mental strategies accordingly based on whether it's a team or even that single sport, or that sport where it's just them versus almost the world?
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting topic that you bring up, right? And it's actually something that they've actually started to study a little bit. And I think that there are so many similarities, honestly, in mental performance between team sport individuals and individual sport individuals. But the big difference comes when how you manage the emotions of the moment. So the research shows pretty clearly that it's more demanding psychologically, mentally. It's a bigger strain on your mental performance when you're an individual sport athlete because you don't have the support of the team. When you're an individual sport athlete, you can't lean on, your friend that you've been playing with for a couple of years, and you get really nervous before the game, but they don't. So you just sit with them and you talk and you guys warm up together. You don't have the feeling of security of stepping into an arena with, for a football player, 55 other men. When you're a tennis athlete or you're doing some other type of individual sport, you got to step in there alone. And the mental pressures and the mental stressors that are on individual athletes are greater. So that's one of the big differences that we see in studying the literature about mental performance for individual versus team sport athletes.
And obviously, in a team sport, which you performed highly at, I mean, you had the opportunity to play with, catch passes from some notable quarterbacks. Obviously, one that stands out to me, and he can ball pretty well. They call him Peyton the Sheriff Manning. The dude can play. What did you learn from these experiences, and how did Peyton kind of shape your mental toughness? As obviously he was just such a great at doing that and making everyone around him better.
Yeah, I actually like talking about this because I think that even though Peyton has a reputation for being one of the best football and quarterback minds, we still have no way of appreciating the extent of his mental abilities, right? Like, here's not a guy that ran a 4.5 40 and, was breaking and dodging defenders, right? That wasn't what his game was built on. His game was built on being as mentally sharp as possible. And what effect did that have on me? I'm gonna ask you for a second. Just think about this, right? You're 23 years old, 24 years old, maybe. I can't remember now. One of those. You've only been playing football for 3 years of your life. 2 of those years you were out injured. And here comes a 36-year-old, in my opinion, best quarterback of all time. And he's playing football at the highest level mentally it's being played. Now, everybody is playing at a similar physical level, but if you watch offenses enough, you know that some quarterbacks are playing it at a different level mentally. And at 23, 24 years old, he comes in with this standard. And he's not giving you an opportunity to just come play and get on the field if you're here. He's demanding that you're here. And so I tell people one of the best things that ever happened to me in life was to be 24 years old and understand really, really clearly, if you want to get on the field, you have to gain the respect, trust of one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and you have to be highly accountable. One of the things that was really fundamental about Peyton is discipline. Are you where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there? Every single one of those audibles, every single one of those plays that we checked out of into a different play, you had to know where you were supposed to be, and he's counting on you. And once you're able to develop his trust, and once he learns he can count on you, then you guys can go make a little magic together. And that's what we were able to do. And that really elevated me to a level of mental performance, of responsibility, of accountability that I had not been able to, just not been pushed to previously.
And shout out to the Sheriff. And in Mile High, I think it's one of the best examples. You guys have still have such an amazing crowd, such an amazing atmosphere. What is the impact of a crowd influence, both positive and negative, on an athlete's mental state during a game?
Yeah, that's a great question. What we do know from the research and literature is that there is a significant home field advantage, and we see it across sports. Home field advantages are important, and they're important for different reasons. Sometimes, it helps to increase the confidence, the comfortability that athletes have. But when you talk about specifically, in my opinion, what I think the difference a crowd can make is sometimes a crowd can provide energy. It's hard to be a professional athlete. You're not waking up every day feeling the best you've ever felt in the world. So sometimes you need an external influence to help give you that little extra bit, to push that little extra bit harder, to know that what you're doing matters not just to you and those around you, but it also matters to a community, a state, a region. And I think that that was really what was cool about playing in Denver is you recognize really quickly that, there's probably 4 or 5 states of diehard Broncos fans, and it means so much to them. And sometimes you can feed off their excitement. And when I think about the crowd, that's what I think. The crowd it brings an electric energy into a stadium, and you can feel it, right? That's why we like going to games in person because it's having an effect on us psychologically and physiologically. Maybe we can't quantify it. We don't know how to discuss it, but it is. And that means a lot for athletes.
And something that really kind of stood out to me is you talked about how obviously you had injuries. Your first 2 years were not where you wanted to be. But as you mentioned earlier, resiliency creates adversity. So how does adversity such as those injuries that you sustained kind of affect an athlete's mental performance? And then what strategies can they use to bounce back stronger?
Great question. We actually know that injuries are significantly challenging time for athletes, right? Like, what did you do your whole life? You want to be out there on the field, court, ice, you name it, and then now you're not able to. And so, an interesting little fact I'm going to drop on you is we actually see the highest levels of depression in athletes is for injured athletes. When athletes are injured, that is a prime time to have a lot of low, difficult, challenging emotions that you're going through. And we do start to see an uptick or an increase in depression in athletes in that time. So for me to have gone through so many injuries, it was one of the harder mental performance lifts that I've had to do. I talk about the tough times, the challenging circumstances. That's a big lift, and you have to find a way to move through that. I had a lot of challenges because there was a lot of frustration. You work so hard to get your body into the right place to play at a high level, and then when you get injured, you have to start over. When I had my first injury, I was in a cast for 12 weeks, no weight. So you come out of the cast 12 weeks, you look at your leg and you're like, damn, I spent years trying to build all the muscle, build the fine-tuned motor movements, the reaction, and now you have to start over again. So the hardest thing I found about injuries was always having to pick yourself back up and start over again. And by going through that, it really gave me a lot of resilience. And one of the things that I used that I think other people should think about using for themselves is just to remember how bad you want it. Like sometimes when you're in the training room day after day, month after month, I did a 2-year rehab. I mean, that's hard and mentally challenging, but I can only think about how bad I wanted to prove that I could play in the NFL, that I knew that I had the ability to be dominant and to be a game changer. And that's what got me through all the extra training, the extra treatment, was just having this burning desire, this passion to say, you know what? I really want this bad. And if this is the price I have to pay to get it, well, let's do it again.
How bad do you want it? And I think they say from rock bottom, there's only one way up. And I think you just come back hungrier. I think that's always the mentality I've had and something that the underdogs always carry. I mean, when you're kicked to the curb, when you're kicked to the floor, you get back up and you get back up stronger, you get back up better, and you get back up hungrier. Now, obviously, there's so many rituals and routines. And I don't want to ask you specifically, can you share the insights into the role of rituals and routines in an athlete's mental preparation? Obviously, I think that has such a big thing to do with how an athlete prepares mentally for a game or a practice or even an ice bath.
Yeah, man. The routine, I think, is important for everybody at all times. And it's especially important for athletes because it provides its own sense of something that's predictable, something that provides a comfort for you, right? So I think most athletes, they typically try to have a night before the game routine.
Mm-hmm.
a morning routine, and then right at the stadium before the game routine. And I was no different, man. Like the night before the game, I knew I wasn't like a great sleeper the night before the game. Like they're always like, "Oh man, get as much sleep as you possibly can." But I'm excited. I'm amped up and ready to play. So I knew I was always going to be up a little later at night than I probably wanted to be. So one of the things that I would do is, like, you're in the hotel room sitting around, text the people that you care about, reach out to those friends and family, right? And, get a little bit of social support. But then I would always read before I went to bed. I found that reading was not something that just gave me a good pastime and good hobby, one of my favorite hobbies, but it also really relaxed my mind. We all know, it's hard not to fall asleep when you're reading, right? So it was good for me to read at night before the games, because then, next you pass out, books on the bed, and you wake up 6-7 hours later and you're like, oh, that was perfect, right? And then in the morning, I would always get up, and the first thing I would do was study my playbook. I think I was a little obsessed about making sure that I understood what I needed to do each and every game. So one of the first things I wanted to do was set my mind towards what I wanted it to be focused on that day. First thing when I wake up, get in the playbook. Make sure you go over all 140 to 160 plays or whatever you have that that you have to go be on point on. And then I would go down, eat breakfast. I try to go to the same breakfast spots usually. There was a place in Denver called Mimi's Cafe. I go over there, get the same breakfast every day, go back to my place, get ready, same pregame routine. And then when I got to the stadium, one of the first things I wanted to do is I wanted to start to drink in the atmosphere. So I would just get dressed, put on a little pregame clothes, and just start walking around the stadium. I wanted to see the lights. I wanted to really sink into that space in that time. I always did 2 laps around with the ball, talking to myself, reminding myself that I'm going to come over here and be amazing and dominant today. I should tell myself this funny thing, but it kind of helped me psychologically. I would say 60,000 people came here to watch you ball out today. So go ball out. Was that true? Probably not, because on an away game, no one wanted to see you ball out. But those are some of the mental things that I told myself. And I think that really helped me have an edge.
Yeah. And 60,000 people did see you ball out, as you are a 2-time Pro Bowler and considered one of the best tight ends to ever do it. Now, how can young athletes and even their parents understand the importance of mental training alongside physical training for that long-term success in sports?
Man, this is a topic that means a lot to me. And as you know, I just started a new really lane in my brand called the Parents Playbook. And I thought about this because for me in my life, the mental side was even less talked about. It was less discussed when I was coming up as a youth athlete, but we're starting to understand and appreciate it more and more. And the thing that I would tell parents and youth athletes is, when you develop your mental performance, it carries across life in a way your physical performance doesn't. So for me, like, I have some of the best hands in the world. I tell people all the time, look, if there's a building on fire and you have to drop your baby out the window, you hope that I'm somewhere around, because you're gonna have a safe baby. But it's really hard for me to utilize having great hands now in this part of life. But the mental performance stuff, if you invest and you commit to helping your child develop mental performance, they absolutely will be able to use that. What is it? Less than 1% become a professional athlete. So you spend all this time on strength and conditioning coaches, on sports specific skills coaches, paying for travel ball, taking them to this league and that league. And there might be really diminished returns on that. But every single dollar, minute, ounce of effort you commit to helping your youth athlete develop mentally is just going to carry them into whatever phase of life they go into. So we always said that the game is 90% mental. And we always say that the mental side is the most important side. But we haven't started living that way. We haven't started building out how we help youth athletes develop, if that's true. So I'm saying, put the priority and the focus on their mental development. If they've got mental skills, if they have a strong attitude, great behaviors, if they know how to handle thoughts and feelings, if they have good values, what? That's going to matter for them when they're 45, 65, 80, right? And I really tried to provide parents with some of these skills, some information, and little tips that they can use to have conversations with their young athletes about how they can help grow their mental performance.
Yeah, and I think one analogy for bodybuilding, or just I guess any sport, you can be physically strong, but if you're not mentally strong as well, you're not your complete self. You're not the best version of yourself. And unfortunately, tying that to mental health, I'm a big advocate for mental health. And, we often see the importance of going to the hospital, and no shame in going to the hospital for a cut or a bruise, but going to a psychologist or a psychiatrist is so stigmatized when, that's just part of becoming better. The mental aspect is so important, and especially you can carry the mental aspect on from after sports. And unfortunately, sports is just a game at the end of the day. Life has so much more meaning than a sport. And I do want to kind of end this in for you. And you talked about the injury, but you went through so much, obviously, from going from basketball to football, and they're often great stories of resiliency, and you have so many. Can you share a personal moment from your career where you had to overcome adversity, and what did you learn from it, Julius?
Man, my whole career was about overcoming adversity. And I think one of the greatest moments of adversity that I faced, and I call it one of probably my lowest moments of being an athlete, was within that 2 year grind to get back onto the field, going from your first catch in the NFL to missing 2 seasons. That second year of that recovery was really hard because all I was able to do was practice. And I was still on the roster, but I never got a jersey. Every single game I went to, and you get to the gym, I mean, the arena, I'm sorry, and you're with everybody on your team, but your jersey's never on your pads. Your stuff is in the locker. You go work out before the game. You go catch the passes while everybody's warming up. But when they go get dressed and they put their stuff on, they get ready to go out to battle. You get to stand on the sidelines with a little towel around your neck. And that was hard because I did that for 16 games. I watched it. And in one particular practice, because the only thing I had in was practice, that was my entire life. The only opportunity I had to continue to grow with the game, football, was to practice.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the defensive coaches came up to me and he said, "Julius, we don't need you to practice today. We don't want you out there. I don't like the way you run routes, to be honest. And you just sit over there." So the one thing I had, the one opportunity that I felt that I would get in a week to keep getting better, to get a chance to go play the game that I love, got taken from me. And I remember sitting there on a helmet. And sports is it's a tough place, right? And nobody was sitting around feeling bad for me. Practice was going on and everybody was doing their responsibilities and getting better. And I sat on that helmet and I thought to myself, now I think this is the worst feeling I've ever had in sports. And I'm never going to feel this fucking feeling again. I will never feel this again. I will make sure that they never take me off the field again until I'm ready to go. And I always talk about how you respond to the adversity really shows me about your character. And for me, the way I'm going to respond to adversity is I'm going to double down and I'm going to show up with a tenacity, with an excitement, with a drive to go make the difference. And that's what I did. That next year, I got the opportunity that I've been waiting for, and they never took me off the field after that. I remember that same DB coach that told me he didn't like my routes and he didn't want me to practice that day. I remember that he was a DB coach for another team that we played a couple of years after that. And I make sure that I went out and had a phenomenal game. And every single time I saw his ass on those sidelines, I told him, "That's me running those routes that you don't like, isn't it? Have fun coaching that shit up." So that's what it's about. What do you do when adversity shows up? You double down. You respond with another level that's deep within inside you that you didn't even know you had. And then you make them feel that. And whoever them is. And that is how you become a person of strong resilience. And that's how you build your mental performance.
Got me a little emotional. The lights turned off. I mean, wow. that's where you dig deep. That's where you dig deep. And for you, that's where you dug deep and you said, I want it more than the next person. No one's granted anything. And I've learned that sometimes the hard way. And I think we've all learned that we're not given anything. We have to work for everything. And
Yep.
you worked for everything in your career, from becoming a football player to one of the best football players of all time. It wasn't given to you, as you just mentioned. And there were people who didn't see what you saw, but you saw it the whole time, Julius. And to me, that screams superstar, that screams leader, and that screams mental toughness, mental resiliency. And again, superstar just plays over and over in my head when I think of Julius Thomas. Now, my final question for you is, what is your biggest tip for someone who is looking to make it to the big leagues like you once were, sir?
I think that if somebody wants to become a professional, I don't care what you want to be a professional in. It could be bodybuilding, it could be basketball, it could be football, it could be soccer, baseball, you name it. You have to dial in a process, and you have to get systematic about what you need to be doing in every moment of your day. I'm not talking about your month or your week. You got to go on another level of mental performance. You got to go into another level of commitment. You have to figure out, what do I need to be doing in every moment of my day that gets me just that much closer to what I'm after. Stop thinking about big jumps. Big jumps. Get your mind off of that. Start thinking about little steps. What's the controllable things that you can do in your day to get better every day? And be relentless about it. Be obsessed with it. Start sacrificing things, right? Like sometimes, I talk to young athletes, they say, I want to be a pro. And I ask them, okay, that's great, but what'd you give up? What are you giving up right now to become a pro? You can't have as many hours you want to play video games and go to the mall as many hours you want, or talk on the phone. Like, something has to be sacrificed in order for a great goal to be attained. So have a commitment to a process. Know what you're chasing and know what you're giving up to be able to get there. And when you think about that every single day, now you're on the way.
Julius Thomas, ladies and gentlemen, class act on as well as off the field. And you just saw how the importance of mental toughness, mental resiliency is just as important as that physical, aspect that is brought to sports and just brought to life in general. Now, sir, before we go, the floor is yours. Where can we find all the stuff that you're working on? I know you have so many different courses and so much going on for you. And what is all those links? Where can we find all that stuff? And I got to ask the $1 million question: when is the damn book coming out, Julius?
Yeah. No, it's something I've been thinking about. I'm really excited to start working on a book. I think that I'm going to title it "The Simple Way to Achieve Anything." And I think that's a catchy way of helping people understand that what I'm going to provide is really my system, not just what I've done, but what I've learned from some of the best performers in the world. When you engage with my content, I want people to understand that this isn't just me talking about my experience. This isn't just me talking about the things that I've learned from Hall of Fame athletes like Champ Bailey, Brian Dawkins, Peyton Manning, guys like that. It's not just me talking about what I've learned in psychology or neuroscience. It's a combination of it all. I'm putting all that together to be able to give people tips, strategies, and techniques to go achieve whatever it is in life they want. And I would say that the first way is, start checking out my social media platforms. Julius Thomas on Instagram, Facebook, just got a new TikTok out. So that is starting to grow, getting a lot of stuff on there. So you can follow me on TikTok, julius.d.thomas. And then, just follow along. Like, all I'm doing is just giving away things that are going to change people's lives and help people have a little bit more resilience, fortitude. And the best thing is grow their mental performance.
Right. And all the links will be in the YouTube bio. I mean, please check it out and just learn the importance. And even if you just watch one of Julius's Instagram reels, which I've watched many of them, I mean, the motivation that is brought to the content is so phenomenal. And I mean, I don't think too many people can speak like Julius. So Thank you again, Julius, for taking your time to come on the podcast, man. And I do have one final question. What was Peyton Manning like in the locker room? I have to know.
People ask me this a little bit more and more now because they're seeing this other side of him. From doing the Monday night games, and he's similar to how he is on TV. He's making jokes, he's laughing at the right times. I wouldn't say before the game he's as jokey, but throughout the week, practice, he's always finding a way to have a little fun. But he's very intense. You see that his process is what helped make him elite. Actually, I'm going to go a step further. His process is absolutely the thing that made him elite. What makes Peyton different is the way he goes about it. So when you see him in the locker room, like it doesn't matter if he's just warming up his shoulders before the game. He's focused, he's dialed in, he's trying to do it to the best. It doesn't matter if he's going and having a conversation with one of the guys on offense about something he just saw earlier that morning on film. And he wants to be able to attack the defense in the way that day. So intense focus, obsessed with the process, and a class act professionally at all times.
And ladies and gentlemen, you heard it here from one of the best tight ends of all time, Julius Thomas. Again, check out all his stuff on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Until next time, I'm just going to say it. 2 underdogs out.
Yep.